Hey, it's Mo. I am so glad you're here today. I am glad to be here, actually. I've been really busy with work and just my family and stuff, so I'm thrilled that I get to sit down and film today. I've got gorgeous natural light. You know, I only use natural light. So all the things have come together today to make this video possible, and I'm really glad because I'm pretty excited about this palette. I was pretty excited when I first saw it announced, and it is the Pumpkin Spice palette from Too Faced. So you very well may know that over the past couple of years, Too Faced released a couple of palettes, the Gingerbread Spice palette in 2018, and then there was the Gingerbread Extra Spicy palette in 2019, both of which I liked, by the way. But as soon as I found out this was coming out, I was pretty excited, and it was released, I believe the first release was exclusive to HSN. I have never shopped there in my entire life, but I went to the website and I ordered the set that had the pumpkin spice palette and the melted matte lipstick in pumpkin spice. And I received the palette, but the lip color was not in there. So I, of course, got in contact with customer service and I said I paid $70 for this set. I didn't get the lip. Please send it to me. They told me, no, it wasn't a set. You only got the eyeshadow palette for $70. No, I didn't. So I went back and forth. In the end, after a lot of time, they said they couldn't send me the lip color by itself because they're only sold as a set. So they refunded me some money, but not as much as the cost of the lip color. So I did not have a great first experience with HSN. And it's not on their website anymore. But good news for you, the palette is $49 and it is available at Ulta, it is available at Sephora, and it is available at TooFaced.com. So I would recommend purchasing from any of those fine vendors. Anyway, I'm sure it was just an anomaly. I suspect they normally have good customer service, but I had a not good experience, which is kind of a bummer, especially for my first one. Anyway, enough about me. Pumpkin Spice palette is why you are here. And as I said, it's kind of in that same theme as the gingerbread palettes. It's the Too Faced tin packaging. A lot of people think that this is Too Faced's best formula when it's in the tin packaging. And I definitely agree that I've enjoyed the gingerbread palettes and other palettes like the Clover palette and other chocolate bar, all of those that have come out in the Too Faced formula. So let's look at the color story. Ta-da, there she is. And it is obviously being marketed, we'll say, as a fall palette since it's pumpkin spice, not as much holiday. And I think that's kind of a wise move on Too Faced's part because like a gingerbread palette or a holiday specific thing, you might think of more as buying for a gift, or you might only use it like around the holidays and then you think, well, I can't use that in September, but pumpkin spice, right? You'll go for a good old PSL in September, or you'll go in February, or maybe even March. So this just seems like it has more longevity. Now on the Too Faced website, it has this weird thing that says super limited edition. I do not know what that means. It doesn't say that on Ulta. It doesn't say that on Sephora. I believe it's limited edition. I don't know what super limited edition means. I don't really think it means anything in particular, but I'm just letting you know that it says that on the Too Faced site. So here's the color story, as I said. I will swatch all of these, we'll talk about it. This is a full review. I've been using it for a week. I've done a variety of looks. I believe I've used every single color in the palette so that I can give you a fairly comprehensive review and my thoughts. And aside from the fact that I was excited about this palette and that on first look, I like the color story. I want to be able to, really tell you what I think of it, not just, oh, I'm excited about it and here's my first impression. I always like to do a full review just so if you're going to spend your money, and $49 is a lot of money. If you're going to spend your money, I want you to know at least the experience that I've had with it and whether I think it's worth your money. So packaging first. As you can see, it's the tin packaging, as we discussed. Very pumpkin pie themed with the crust, out here. This looks like it's in whipped cream, and this is raised, by the way, as is kind of the crust. I don't know if you're gonna be able to see that it's raised, but it's not just flat, it's actually raised. And then spice is in kind of a gradient of pink to yellow colors. Open it up, of course there's a mirror as you already saw, and the mirror, just like with the gingerbread palettes, the mirror has kind of a die cut cardboard thing around it. So it's not completely a full-size mirror, but it's very serviceable, and that's what I've used all the times that I have used the palette. Let's talk about the scent. I'm not generally a big fan of scented makeup, but I will admit that this one I like. I do like this one. The gingerbread palettes are scented. To me, they always smelled like Play-Doh. Like, they never smelled like gingerbread to me. They just had more of a Play-Doh scent. This is different. This smells different than the gingerbread palettes, and to me, this one is pleasant. It smells pumpkin spicy. Not overly spicy, not like tickle your nose spicy, but just, it has a really pleasant scent. Now, it's not subtle. As soon as you open it, you're gonna get that waft of scent. So if that's something you're sensitive to or something you don't like, then this is gonna be I think a no-go for you. But I like the scent. I prefer it to the gingerbread palette scents. And then what we've got in here is 18 shades. 12 of them are mattes. So really a lot of matte shadows. That actually makes me happy. I like to work with mattes, and then generally in terms of a shimmer or a sparkle, I'll kind of pop that on the middle, kind of like I did today. So with the shimmers, there's a couple of formulas. So like this one, and I'm gonna say this one. Those three are kind of one more standard shimmer formula, kind of what you'd expect, but then this and this and this are more of a formula that's kind of a foiled. It's difficult to kind of convey because it feels soft in the pan, but it comes off just a little bit flaky, but not in a way that's like a dry, flaky, it doesn't show up kind of thing. In fact, it almost feels like you can kind of work it in and it feels a little more creamy. So you can see like the kind of payoff you get from those. And all three of those I find to be pretty consistent. So the one thing I will say about that formula, which I'm just gonna call a foiled formula, is that I had to remind myself to be a little cautious, because if I'm really digging in there with my finger, because I do apply those with my finger, that I might like disturb it and cause flakes to happen. But if I'm keeping my wits about me and I use it the way I did here and I'm pressing it on my eye, it has a lot of payoff and it works very nicely. And it's not that, I think you know what I mean by like those dry, powdery, flaky, almost glittery shimmers that you're like, you know, you try to pick something up on your finger and it's just, you kind of see some glitter and it doesn't have any payoff. That's not what these are. And I like that they included this formula. In my memory, I don't remember seeing this formula in any of the gingerbread palettes. If you're familiar with Colourpop, they have a formula like this. It came out in their holiday palette, I think Good as Gold. I think that was the name of it. It came out in that holiday palette last year. That's the first time I was ever aware of this kind of formula, and it's been in a couple of Colourpop palettes since. So it's that kind of formula, if you know what I'm talking about. And if you don't, I'm sorry, I'm trying to describe it. And when I do swatches, you know, kind of like this, you'll get the gist of what I mean by those more foiled formulas. So those are basically the three formulas. There's matte, there's what I'll call a traditional shimmer, and then there's the more foiled. 18 shades, as I said. Each of these is 0.7 grams. Now, that is a little less than I prefer. I really like to have, if there's an eyeshadow palette, particularly one that I'm paying a decent amount of money for, I would like the minimum size to be 1 gram. But these are 0.7, and which surprised me. And I went back and looked at my gingerbread palettes, and they are in fact also 0.7. So if you have a gingerbread palette, or really any of the Too Faced tin packaging palettes, it's the same amount of eyeshadow in each pan. So I always like to mention that. I like people to know how much they're getting for their money. So that's kind of the answer to that. And let's do swatches, because really, that's why you're here. Oh, and before we do swatches, just quick, I wanted to show you my shirt. It's my favorite new shirt. It says, "Let me sleep." It's like the story of my life. I'm a horrible, horrible sleeper. Like, seriously, a butterfly flapping its wings wakes me up. I'm the lightest sleeper ever, so I nap a fair bit because I never can sleep through the night. And inevitably, there is some force or some person in my house waking me up. So I have bought the "Let Me Sleep" shirt, and I'm letting my family know, please recognize what this says. Understand what I need. Let's do the swatches. Okay, so we're gonna start with whipped cream and crisp. What is it? Yep, crisp. And Fall for It, which is a peach. By the way, my nail color, if you're curious, is an Essie shade. It's called You Do Blue. So here we go with those first 3 swatches. I always do live swatches because I want you to get an accurate representation in natural light of how hard am I dipping into the pan, what precisely am I doing. I know I appreciate like knowing some level of accuracy when it comes to swatches. So this crisp shade is what I'm calling just a regular kind of standard shimmer. It's got a bit of a duochrome shift, as you can see, kind of pink to gold. A very pretty shade. It doesn't show up a ton on me, at least in the ways that I've used it so far. Then we move on to Pumpkin Spice, the namesake of the palette. Ginger Spice here, and Cocoa Drizzle. This one's interesting. It doesn't look interesting, right? This brown shade, but it is almost a neutral, sorry, I slammed that lid. It's almost a neutral brown, which I find interesting because there's a more plum brown leaning shade, but this one, it's not as warm as I would anticipate. It's not a cool brown, but it's not overly warm, and I think this was an interesting addition because it would have been so easy to just put a warm brown in there and call it good. But there's several kind of deeper shades, and this one I do like because you can mix it with, you know, some of the cooler leaning shades. There's a lot of variety in this palette, and you'll see that more as I do the swatches. So that's the first row. Now we've got Fall Vibes, which this is one of the foiled shades that I was talking about. Sweetie Pie, which I think is the most interesting shade in the palette. Like I said, almost a topaz olive green. And then here's a traditional shimmer. This is Falling for You. So there's those 3, which I think are a really interesting additions. So here's that foiled shade like I talked about. And then there's the interesting kind of topaz, grungy mustard shade, which I wouldn't expect in a palette like this. It really surprised me that that shade was in there. And then kind of an olive, almost slightly brown leaning, more traditional shimmer. So we've already got a fair bit of variety there, and we're halfway through the palette. This is Spice Spice Baby. I appreciate that name. I think it's kind of cute. Too Faced always does a good job with the names. This one is You Spicy. This one is a touch more dry. Of the mattes, this one's a little bit more dry. It doesn't shock me a lot. Brighter colors tend to be that way. And then this is Warm and Cozy, which is a brown, but it's got some plum in it. So that's more of a plummy brown, which is why I kind of appreciate that other brown being in there also. Which you can, so what I'm talking about, maybe I'm going on about this, but see how warm this is? This is almost a neutral brown. I think that was a very smart addition. Here's that one that I said is a little drier, which is PSL and Chill, but that, no, what's the name of that? Wait a minute, I need to correct myself. So, I was wrong, this is You Spicy. This is the one I was talking about that felt a little dry, but it swatches very nicely. I used it on my eyes today. I haven't had any problems with it. So there we are so far, and I think you can tell, I mean, looks to me, if I was watching this, I'd be like, oh, those are swatching pretty well, which I guess doesn't surprise me about this, generally about this Too Faced formula in the tin packaging. Here's another foil. This is Oh My Gourd. That might be my favorite name in the palette. We've got A La Mode and Want a Piece of Me. So, Oh My Gourd and Want a Piece of Me are, again, those are the other 2 foiled shades, as I'm calling them. And I particularly love this A La Mode shade right here, this kind of mauve-y pink. That is straight up my street. That's the kind of color I love to have in a palette. I used it actually as my transition shade today. And then we've got just 3 left. Wow. Love You a Latte, which is another kind of mauve leaning shade, a little more depth, a little more lavender. And then this is what I'm calling a more traditional shimmer. That one is PSL and Chill. And then Spice of Life is the last one, which is a deep purple matte. There they are. I want you to see those. And then you probably know, see there's that more shimmer, and it's got a bit of a duochrome also, this PSL and Chill. And then here's the deep purple one. Purples and blues, you may or may not be aware, particularly mattes, are very difficult to formulate. Someday, I'm gonna find out why, because I don't know why that is. So this one, when I have used it, it looks more vibrant in the pan, that deep purple. Looks a little more vibrant, and for me, when I used it, it came off, it definitely had purple to it, but it comes off kind of just as a dark shade on the eye. So it didn't come up super purple. Now I paired it with, I think I paired it with the shimmery purple, and I ended up with a really pretty purple look. So it does work for that, but it's not gonna be like bright purple, just so you know. So here's everything swatched. There's a lot of mid-tone. There's a lot of mid-tone. There's some good light shades. There's a lot of really warm shades. There's this whole section that's cool. There's a pink. And like I said, these kind of olivey topaz shades. And then there's this, by the way, the light, we'll call it the cream shade, has just a tinge, just the slightest tint of a pink undertone, which works on my skin tone, so I'm happy about that, but I want you to know that it's not like a straight up cream. So there we go. There's all the swatches from the palette. As far as I'm concerned, that's swatched really, really well. And I have found the performance to be, for me at least, on par with the gingerbread palettes also, which I've told you I liked. So I think that this formula is, I'm gonna say, the same formula that many of us have come to know and love in from Too Faced in the tin packaging. And really, I really like the color story. Now, there has been discussion, I think, online, when isn't there, that it's just a repeat. You know, it's like, okay, we have gingerbreads, extra spicy, this is just the same thing, kind of mixed around. It's not completely inaccurate, it's also not completely accurate. So let's just compare them side by side. This is gingerbread spice, this was the original palette, and this over here is the new one. So are there some similarities? There are definitely some similarities. You see that bright pink, you see that kind of matte peach in there. But this one clearly doesn't have like the purpley and quite as mauve tones. There's a lot more light shades in this one. Like there's 3 down that one side that are just like very light. You don't have that in the pumpkin spice palette. And then the gingerbread extra spicy, this one I think is warmer overall. Like if I just looked at these, if these were from separate brands, not in the same packaging, I don't think that I'd say, oh, those are the same palette. And that's kind of how I had to look at it. So is there overlap? There's absolutely overlap. And also what was interesting, the first time I opened it, I'm like, oh, this looks just like the Just Peachy Mattes. Like I can totally see that like sunset eye that I could get out Just Peachy Mattes. And even this looks like one of the shades in the Just Peachy Mattes. So what's interesting to me is that this is like if gingerbread spice and gingerbread extra spicy and Just Peachy Mattes and the white peach palette like had a baby palette. So for me, it's almost like a collection of some other Too Faced shadows, which I actually kind of like that these are all together. By the way, the white peach palette I don't have. I got it, I returned it. That palette did not work for me. So these colors, some of these colors are similar to the white peach palette, but the performance, at least as my experience goes, is vastly better. So if you liked the idea of the white peach palette, but the performance just wasn't up to standard, this might be the thing that you want. So I've used this, I've done, oh, what have I done? This is my fifth look, I think, with this. And I'm just inserting some here so you can see a few of what I've done. I tried to do a fair variety of looks because it's real easy to, you know, my eye immediately when I open this up, I'm like, pumpkin spice right over here. I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna put a pop of gold. I mean, you can absolutely do that. But today, you know, I really wanted to go for, can I do a pinkish look? And I think I achieved that and I'm very happy with it. I've done a warm look and I've done a purple look and I've done a warm and cool mix. And I have really enjoyed this palette. What was telling to me was that this morning when I was getting ready to film, you know, I've used this palette. It's 5 days in a row, which, you know, if you have a lot of makeup, you know, you probably switch it up a fair bit. I do when I'm just doing what I want. But I was excited to use this palette and come up with another look. So I think there's a lot of variety. I think the formula is really good. I like the scent of it. Again, that's going to be obviously very, very personal. The one thing about the packaging, Too Faced, I tend to expect something a little more pizzazzy. So while I like what they did, I feel like there should be some, I don't know what, I don't even know what, but like you compare it to gingerbread and it's like, there's just a little more oomph to the look of this packaging. So that's like one of the very few things that I'd be like, oh, well, I would change this. Oh, and the only other thing that I would change, this is for me, I would have a pale shimmery shade, because when I've been doing my, you know, the various looks that I've done, I was like, oh, I would really like a nice inner corner highlight from this palette. Now I could probably use the one that I have in the center of my eye today, but since that's more that foiled formula and I tend to use my little finger to do that, I'm not sure that formula is gonna work as well for that. So I've been very happy with all the looks I've gotten from this palette. I haven't struggled with any of the formulas. The only thing I had to keep in mind was that those more foiled formulas, I couldn't just like really dig my finger in there. I had to be a little bit aware of that. But I think they give a really beautiful effect. So there you go. That's what I think of the Too Faced Pumpkin Spice palette. As always, I hope that was helpful because that is my only purpose here. I absolutely love makeup. I do not tire of it ever. It's a lifelong love of mine. And I'm really appreciative that you come and you hang out and we just talk about it. And I hope you are at peace today. And I'll talk to you soon.